There is a stillness the world rarely teaches, not the stillness of doing nothing, but the stillness that comes right before the storm changes direction. That sacred pause when the air thickens and the wind shifts, but no one else notices yet. It's invisible, but it moves everything. That's what this is. You've been moving, striving, trying to crack the code. You've read the books, you've tried the affirmations, you've repeated the habits they said would work. Maybe you journaled, prayed, hustled, rested, manifested, then worked harder again and hoping this time it would finally stick. But still, when something feels stuck, like driving with one foot on the gas and the other unknowingly resting on the brake. You're not lazy, you're not undisciplined, you're not missing some secret gene. What you're bumping up against is invisible, and almost no one talks about it. It's not about what you're doing, it's about what's quietly guiding it, a hidden rule, an ancient law, a current beneath the waterline of every life you admire, every millionaire who kept what they earned, not just financially, but spiritually. They moved with it, not against it. That rule, it doesn't scream, it doesn't promote itself. It doesn't argue for your attention like the next 5-step plan. But when you align with it, everything begins to obey. You don't have to control every outcome. You don't have to chase validation. You don't have to burn out trying to become someone. Because you remember, it's not about becoming. It's about being the one who no longer hides your inner command. The millionaires who lasted, the ones with peace behind their eyes and strength in their walk, they followed this rule, but not because someone gave them a roadmap, because life kept breaking them until they listened to the law that was already inside them. You can too. This isn't a tactic. This is a realignment with what you already know is true, but haven't trusted in a long time. The invisible rule is not something to learn, it's something to remember. And it begins now in stillness, in presence, in the quiet awareness that you are not broken, you are just not yet anchored. So take a breath, not a shallow one, a real one. The kind that opens your chest and returns your weight to the ground beneath your life. You're not here to be impressed, you're here to be revealed to yourself. Let the noise fall, let the rush pause, let the pretending break. Because now we name what's been stealing your fire. Now we remember the rule, and it will not just change what you chase, it will change who does the chasing. When you're ready, we begin. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't touch. It's not from overworking. It's from overreaching, constantly leaning towards something that never seems to lean back. And maybe you've felt it. You've set goals, ambitious ones. You've envisioned your future self, the one with freedom, confidence, financial peace. You've pushed, you've tried to stay positive, but it's like running in place on ground that gives way every time you gain momentum. A wheel, endlessly spinning. Not because it's broken, but because the ground beneath it is too soft to grip. That's what most people never name. Success, without anchoring, becomes a trap. Because if you build without stillness, you're building from fear. If you act without identity, you're building from survival. And if you rise without grounding, you fall the moment something shakes. The world teaches chase, hustle, perform, impress, produce, but you weren't born to chase. You were born to command. And command doesn't scream, it roots, it directs, it knows. The millionaires who endured, not just in money but in peace, they didn't just grind harder. They stopped spinning. They anchored. You don't need another blueprint yet. You need to name the truth. You've been chasing for so long you forgot what it feels like to be still without shame. You've built your identity around movement. Not movement from soul, but movement from fear. Fear that if you stop, it all collapses. Fear that rest equals regression. Fear that unless you're sprinting, you're failing. And here's the real wound, the one nobody posts about. You keep thinking the pain means you're doing something wrong. But sometimes the pain is the indicator that you're living out of alignment. It's not punishment, it's precision. Your soul is sounding an alarm. You are moving without roots. And without roots, no tree survives the wind. This isn't to shame your hustle. This is to rescue it. Because your ambition isn't the problem and it's holy. What's missing is the ground it was meant to grow in. That ground is identity, stillness, truth. The invisible rule is simple but sacred. Don't. Move until you've remembered who is moving. The ones who win, well, not just once, but over and over. They aren't the smartest or fastest. They're the ones who no longer abandon themselves when pressure comes. They are rooted. They act from stillness, not frenzy, from alignment, not anxiety. And here's the deepest part. You've likely been praised for your productivity, your drive, your results. But has anyone ever praised your stillness, your presence, your decision to wait for clarity before you act? Probably not. Because the world doesn't reward alignment, it rewards appearance. But the ones who carried real power, the kind that lasts through recessions, heartbreaks, betrayals, and rebuilding seasons, they lived by a rule you were never taught. Move from anchored identity, or don't move at all. The cost of ignoring this is subtle but brutal. You start building businesses that look good, but feel wrong. You wake up every morning with a growing resentment toward a path you chose, but from the wrong state. You attract clients, partners, even relationships that drain you, not because you're unlucky, but because you're unconsciously proving the identity you're stuck in. The outer world mirrors your inner state. Always. So here's the truth. If you feel lost, it's not because your vision is wrong. It's because your foundation isn't holding you. You don't need to quit. You need to return. Return to the place inside you that doesn't perform. The place that doesn't need applause. The place that doesn't hustle to prove its worth. Because when that part moves, clients respond. Money flows, peace returns, and the world bends not because you're screaming louder, but because your signal is finally clear. This is where we begin to shift. We're not chasing anymore, we're remembering. We're rooting. We're calling back the self that doesn't flinch, doesn't rush, doesn't scatter, the self that commands. So breathe, let the wheels stop spinning. Not forever, just long enough to feel the ground again. Because that ground is what turns motion into momentum, effort into impact, work into wealth, and you were never meant to sink in sand. You were made to stand. There's a reason this rule is invisible. It's not because it's secret, it's because it's quiet. And in a world obsessed with noise, most never hear it, but it's always been there, humming beneath the surface of the lives that last. The key. High performers who never burn out. The millionaires who remain generous, grounded, and at peace. The ones who walk into a room and don't have to speak for the atmosphere to change. They're not lucky. They're not more disciplined than you. They've just remembered something you were never told. You are not meant to chase alignment. You're meant to operate from it. And that's the rule. It's not a strategy. It's a sequence. Identity before action. Stillness before speed. Command before creation. But that's not what the world taught you. You were taught to fix your outside first, fix your routines, fix your body, fix your finances, fix your reputation. Then, maybe, you'd feel aligned. But that's backward, because anything built from disconnection will require constant performance to maintain, and eventually, your soul will rebel against it, your body will protest, your mind will fragment. And you'll wonder why it's all still so hard. It's not your plan that's broken, it's the place you're planning from. Alignment isn't a mood, it's a state of being, and every result in your life flows directly from it, or suffers. In its absence, the most successful people, not just in money but in meaning, live by this sequence. Identity. Who am I being right now? Intention. What am I choosing to embody? Instruction. What is mine to do from that state? Implementation. Now and only now. Act. That's the rule. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Look at every area of your life that feels out of control. You'll find an action being taken without inner alignment. That's the pattern. And here's the shift. Action alone does not create alignment. But alignment always creates meaningful action. The millionaires who built legacies, not just bank accounts, stopped outsourcing their sense of direction. They realized you can have the best map in the world, but if your compass is broken, you'll walk in circles. So they went inward. They stopped trusting the panic of the world and started trusting the peace of the still voice within, because that voice, that's the compass. It doesn't speak in urgency. It speaks in clarity, but most never hear it. Not because they lack the voice clarin, but because they never got quiet enough to listen. You have that voice, you always have. It's not gone, just muffled. Under the pressure, under the noise, under the layers of shoulds and have-tos you've inherited from a world that rewards burnout. But deep beneath it all, your compass remains. Buried, yes, but intact. This rule, this sacred law of aligned creation, is not for the chosen few. It's not a privilege, it's not a personality type, it's a pattern, and anyone can return to it, including you. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to become someone new. You need to shift where you're moving from, because when identity comes first, the path adjusts, the fog clears, and the wrong doors stop calling your name. So how do you begin? You ask, not with panic, not with force, but with stillness. Ask, who is the one taking action in my life right now? Is it the true me, or the me shaped by fear, scarcity, and survival? If it's the latter, pause, not in weakness, but in wisdom. Because the world doesn't need more action. It needs more anchored humans behind the action, people who act from truth, from vision, from peace. That's the rule 500 millionaires followed, and you can too, but not by copying them, by remembering you. This is where we break the illusion that wealth only comes from hustle, that peace only comes after success, that purpose only belongs to the lucky. None of that is real. What's real is the compass you've been carrying. And now you're learning how to use it. Before the world grabs you, there is a window, a quiet golden sliver of time when you haven't yet become who the world expects. Your phone is still silent. Your mind is still yours. The shadows haven't yet returned. This is the hour that the wealthy protect with everything, not because they're obsessed with optimization, but because they know something most people don't. Your first hour isn't just the start of your day. It's the declaration of your identity, and identity always leads, whether by choice or by default. Most people wake up into reaction, into noise, into obligations and unfinished to-do lists, and without knowing it, they hand their mind over to the world before their soul has had a chance to speak. But the millionaires who live with clarity, who build from peace, not panic, treat their mornings like sacred ground, because they remember every day is a temple, and the way you enter determines what it reveals. They don't just wake up early, they return to self before the world reclaims them. There's no single ritual, but there is a pattern: stillness, discipline, devotion, alignment. Before emails, before planning, before performance, they tune their inner world like a sacred instrument. It's not about perfection, it's about command. Because when you command the first hour, you anchor the rest. The richest people in soul and bank use the morning not to get ahead, but to get aligned. They understand. If you don't set your internal frequency, someone else will. If you don't meet your mind with silence, it will meet you with noise. If you don't remember who you are, the day will tell you who to be. So what do they do differently? They slow down before speeding up. Some begin in silence. Some write, some pray, some move, but all begin with intention, not impulse, not checking messages, not scrolling, not chasing energy through caffeine and chaos. They meet themselves. And here's the truth: you can do this too, not as a performance, not as a new task, but as a spiritual pattern interrupt, because you don't rise by effort alone. You rise by what you return to daily. Let this become your sacred hour, not because it's trendy, but because it's true. Wake before the world tells you what to fear. Breathe before you perform. Write before you respond. Listen before you react. It doesn't need to be long, but it needs to be yours. You are not behind. You are simply misaligned. And alignment is not found in the future. It's forged in the morning. This is where the rule begins to become real. Not in theory, not in goals, but in a lived, rhythmic, reverent return to the self. Try this. Wake without rushing. Sit, even if only for 5 minutes, in silence. Breathe, deep, intentional, into your lower belly. Ask, who do I choose to be today? Write down the answer. Let that identity lead the rest. You're not doing this for motivation, you're doing this to remember, because the version of you who can build the life you desire already lives inside you. You just need to meet them every morning, and when you do, you'll stop chasing, you'll stop spinning. You'll stop needing proof before peace, because peace becomes the starting point, not the reward. This is how the ones who endured began their days, and over time those mornings rewrote their nights. Their anxiety softened, their clarity sharpened, their path unfolded. Yours will too, but only when your mornings stop being borrowed by the world and start being returned to your soul. Let's tell the truth, no one else will say. You don't need a new strategy. You need a new self, not a fake one, not a shinier mask, not a more productive version of the one who's already exhausted. You need the self that was buried, not broken, because no matter how beautiful your vision, no matter how detailed your blueprint, if the you carrying it is misaligned, self-doubting, or ashamed, it won't stick. Not because you don't deserve success, but because you're not yet embodied enough to hold it. The millionaires who rose and stayed risen didn't just change their routines, they changed their roots. They stopped living as the one who had to prove, perform, or punish themselves into greatness. They stopped running the programs they inherited from chaos, scarcity, and fear. They rewrote their identity, and that changed everything. Because here's the rule most never realize: your results can't rise higher than the self you believe you are. You've probably felt it. That quiet sabotage when you're finally doing well, the fear that creeps in when things get easy, the tension that tightens when you receive something good, and secretly wonder when it will be taken away. That's not a lack of gratitude. That's identity confusion. A part of you is still loyal to the struggle. A part of you still believes safety only comes from control. A part of you still wears the name not enough, like it's sewn into your skin. But it's not your skin. It's just your old layer. And now it's time to shed it. Like a snake in the early light, you are meant to grow out of what no longer fits. This isn't spiritual fluff. This is neurological, emotional, sacred. Every day you operate from an outdated identity. You unconsciously underprice your work. Delay aligned decisions. Seek validation instead of embodiment. Build goals that feel foreign even when you reach them. And so the cycle continues. Effort without ease. Motion without momentum. Results without rootedness. But the moment you shift identity, not through force but through choice, the pattern breaks, because your nervous system begins to recognize a new home. And when the body believes it, the world starts echoing it back. This is the work the 500 did. Not loud, not flashy. They sat with the version of themselves they'd abandoned. They forgave who they had to be to survive. And they chose daily to remember who they actually are. So let me ask you now, who are you being when no one is watching? Because that version is the one the world responds to. Not your posts, not your plans, not your hustle, your presence. And presence can only emerge when identity becomes safe again. So how do you shift? You don't just affirm it, you inhabit it. Here's one sacred practice. Do it slowly. Close your eyes. Breathe. Not shallow, deep into the belly, down into the ground. Visualize the version of you who moves with peace, power, and precision. Don't watch them, step into them. Speak out loud as them. I don't chase, I choose. I don't beg, I become. I don't hustle to prove, I move because I remember. Ask, what would this version of me say yes to today? What would they release, then do it, even if small, especially if small, because embodiment begins with micro decisions, tiny proofs to your nervous system that the old identity isn't in charge anymore. And as you do this, not once but rhythmically, the world begins to shape itself to the self you've reactivated. This is not magic. This is order, sacred, ancient, energetic order, because the world isn't just listening to your words, it's responding to your frequency. And when you shift from striver to sovereign, from imposter to initiator, from reactor to rememberer, everything bends. This is the law beneath the law. This is the invisible rule most never name. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. So be the one who no longer abandons themselves. Be the one who stops trading identity for acceptance. Be the one who walks into the room already knowing, not because you're performing, but because you finally fully came home. There's a story you've been told, that the path must be found, that purpose is a privilege, that your calling is something you earn, uncover, or stumble into, if you're lucky. But that story is a lie, because the truth is simpler, stronger, and infinitely more intimate. You never lost the path. You just forgot the one carrying the key, was you? It was around your neck the whole time, while you chased certainty, while you asked for signs, while you tried to become someone worth believing in. You didn't see it. Because pain has a way of making us forget what we carry. And life, in its strange, sacred wisdom, let you walk through confusion, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Every dead end, every breakdown, every season of silence was never about keeping you out. It was about teaching you to stop looking for the door and start reaching for the key. That's what the 500 millionaires eventually learned. And it changed everything. They weren't following some perfect plan. They weren't waiting for divine clarity to strike like lightning. They made one shift. They stopped outsourcing permission. They stopped asking if they were ready. They stopped looking around to see if it was safe to begin. They stopped trying to fit into a mold that was never theirs. And instead, they remembered the path is revealed through movement, not rushed action, not frantic creation, but sacred, aligned motion from the inside out. You may still be asking, what is my purpose? But the deeper question, the one the world doesn't teach you how to ask, is, who do I become when I stop waiting for proof? Because your purpose doesn't live in your next idea. It lives in your next alignment. It's not a title, it's not a job. It's the unique echo of your soul, expressed with full presence. And that presence begins now. Not when you're healed, not when you're clear. Now, as you are, because the path doesn't require perfection. It requires return. Return to what lit you up before shame dulled your flame. Return to what calmed you before chaos taught you to be loud. Return to what moved you before money told you what mattered. The 500 returned, some through stillness, some through action, but all by shedding what wasn't theirs. They chose to stop performing and start remembering. So ask yourself, gently, what have I been postponing, not because I can't do it, but because I don't feel ready? What door am I pretending is locked, because I'm afraid of what waits behind it? What version of me have I buried? Because the world told me it was too much, too soft, too bold. Now breathe. Because here is the truth. You are not late. You are layered. And the moment you stop peeling those layers with shame and begin doing it with reverence, your path will meet you, not because it suddenly appeared, but because your eyes are finally clear enough to see it. You never needed a perfect plan. You needed permission to begin from where you are. So this is it. The invisible rule all along wasn't a tactic. It was an order. Return, align, act. That's how they did it. Not through constant certainty, but through daily devotion. They acted from identity. They spoke from presence. They created from quiet fire. And they walked through the same world, but no longer the same way. Now it's your turn. Feel the key on your chest. It was never far, only forgotten. Your path is listening. Walk it. There's a quiet moment, right after remembering. No fanfare, no lightning strike. Just a stillness so deep it feels sacred. You are standing in it now, not because something outside of you changed, but because something within you did. And from this point forward, you are not just aware. You are accountable, not to pressure, not to performance, but to the truth you now carry. You were never meant to chase alignment. You were meant to lead from it. The invisible rule the world didn't teach you, now you know it, and that knowing will not unknow itself. You've seen the cost of motion without anchoring. You've felt the hollow weight of success without embodiment. You've lived the loop of trying harder without shifting identity. But now you remember the rhythm, stillness before strategy, presence before performance, alignment before acceleration. And this remembering makes you dangerous to every old pattern. No, you won't be perfect, but you'll be present. And from presence, you'll rebuild everything. So let's speak clearly now. This is not a feel-good ending. This is a commissioning. You are now the keeper of a sacred pattern, one the 500 followed, one the world will try to pull you from. But you will return. Every morning, every moment, with breath, with silence, with choice. And when the world screams, you'll remember the still law that hums underneath it. You don't have to rush. You don't have to prove. You don't have to panic. Because when you move from who you truly are, the world adjusts. This is your responsibility now. Not as a burden, but as a birthright, to lead yourself, to anchor others, to walk with the quiet certainty of someone who remembers. You don't need another course. You don't need another push. You need a return, daily, deliberate, devoted. And so I'll leave you with this. When it gets noisy, return. When the doubt returns, realign. When fear speaks, act anyway, from your center. When others, forget who they are, let your presence remind them, because this isn't effort, this is identity. It's what the 500 mastered. It's what you've remembered, and it's what the world is waiting for, even if it doesn't know it yet. You've always carried the code. Now you have the key. Use it.